Hi, Korai, how are you?
Hello, everyone.
Things are good?
Yeah, it is good. Thank you.
Mm.
Busy,
Yeah,
busy,
you
but
are managing things. Yeah,
yeah.
I can see it.
So
Right. Hello, everyone.
to um,
Is everybody here? Yeah.
Sheriff, you asked about who is assigned to who, and I can share a screen with you all to see that
Yeah,
list, so everyone will get a better
so that
idea who's
everybody
in.
knows. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
So,
great.
um,
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, that's perfect.
now each organization written next to the presenter here will be
Yep.
an in-depth critic for that presentation,
Mm-hmm.
such as Guillermo Sanchez's presentation will be by Sigradi and ECAD, and Juan Pablo's is ASCAD and Cadria.
Right.
So you get the idea, I think.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Korai.
No problem, no problem. If everyone is okay with their assigned students, I can move on.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, cool.
If you could
Absolutely.
just post this in the chat window, that would be great, so we can come back to it later.
Yeah.
Okay, would it be okay to just this one?
Yep.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah, that would be perfect. Okay. Are we ready? Should we get started?
I think so.
I guess everybody's ready.
Yeah. Okay.
4 minutes past wherever you are.
Yeah, exactly. Something plus 4 minutes. All right, welcome everybody. My name is Sharif Abdel Mohsen. I'm president of ASCAD and also associate professor at the American University in Cairo. I'd like to welcome you all to the second day of this workshop. I think I hope you enjoyed the first day. I think there were very fruitful discussions, a lot of insights, a lot of very interesting work by everybody, and hope you guys enjoyed it and continue to enjoy it today and tomorrow. Our session today is a bit special. Its name actually is Special Topics, but it's also a special kind of name where we have a lot of kind of diverse topics in computational design. So all the way from autopoiesis to perception to augmented reality to design cognition and mass customization, a lot of interesting topics, but they're all kind of playing in a diversity of fields. So I think it will be a very interesting discussion and to see everybody having those diverse topics. This session is co-moderated by Christian here and myself. As you can probably see on the screen right now, our panelists, we are happy to be joined by Henry Achten representing ECAD, Rodrigo Martin Iglesias representing Sigradi, Sky Low representing Kadria, and Masoud Akbarzada representing Acadia, and Mustafa Alani representing ASCAD. We hope you all enjoyed the discussion and feedback. Of course, as you know from most of you from yesterday, we have almost like 20 minutes per student. Every student would get like the very difficult 3-minute time frame to present their concise ideas, hopefully in those 3 minutes, and then followed by roughly 10 to 15 minutes of feedback from the respondents and panelists, and then we open the floor for sort of a general discussion from the audience. And I guess, Korai, also, I think we preparing to have questions from the audience from YouTube following us as well on the chat.
Right now we have 16 followers,
Okay.
people who are watching us. We will accept as much as we have for the audience to ask questions because
Okay.
because of the limited time, but we will try to let them squeeze in.
Okay, great. And then we follow that after all five present, we will have a general discussion at the very end of the whole kind of five presentations as a summation from everybody to kind of pitch in their insights and feedback. So I'll give it over to Christian to say a few words and then start with the first students.
Yes, thank you, Sharif. Thanks for the introductions. Thank you also for all the panelists, and thanks especially to the team around Birgol, who have, on behalf of ECAAD, taken the initiative to organize the whole event. That has to be said, there's a lot of work behind it, and thank you for doing this. So this event, just before we start, is a really special opportunity. It's different from, let's say, local PhD gatherings, which are great in itself, but this is the first time that we have actually managed to bring everybody together. So those PhD students who have applied and who we have selected come from all around the world, and they will get feedback from all around the world. We still have some local differences, let's say, in PhD cultures. We have differences in our CAAD research cultures, and it's a great opportunity to get feedback and to encounter people who normally, I think, would be rarely found in one room. So it's a really high caliber panel, and I'm really happy that COVID has actually brought us this new opportunity. So with that, having said that, let's start the event. The first student that we have is Guillermo Sanchez Sotes with the topic Autopoiesis in Architecture and Urbanism, a Discourse Analysis. Guillermo, please go ahead for your 3-minute pitch, and then the panelists are encouraged to start asking questions immediately afterwards. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. Okay, I'm going to share my screen just because I pick up some of my slides and it would be easier to follow. So, well, hello, my name is Guillermo Sanchez Sotes. I'm a PhD candidate at Xianjiantong Liverpool University in China. My PhD project title is Autopoiesis in Architecture and Urbanism, Discourse Analysis. At the beginning of this study, what I wanted is to investigate the typically mobile objects that commercialize and activate public space informally in contemporary urban China, such as these tricycles. The initial idea was to examine these architectural devices as indicators of shortcomings in architectural and urban planning approaches. Trying to describe the city process, I noticed that authors on urbanism approach the city through natural scientific terminology, which using terms such as catalyst, metabolism, symbiosis, autopoiesis, and so forth. I recognize that language use in architecture extends along a gradient that from the narrow and precise to the broader abstract and vague use. Whereas in natural scientific discourse, authors avoid vagueness and ambiguity to ensure clarity. So for different purposes, architectural designers and researchers find value anywhere along this gradient. Therefore, I want to inquire how are natural scientific theories relevant and productive in describing and understanding the city. Furthermore, how then shall design researchers, especially those aiming for clarity and precision, discern between adoptions that are rigorous and those that are flowery? Within those different natural scientific theories, autopoiesis results relevant as it has been recently used to describe architecture in its various multifaceted aspects. It is also the theory that underpins Patrick Schumacher's position on parametricism. The concept actually was initially coined by Humberto Maturana, Francisco Varela, and Ricardo Uribe to describe the capability of living systems to perform process of self-reproduction and self-maintenance. To test the effectiveness of the theory, they construct a cellular automata model in which they show how components out of a nucleus and a membrane decay, and from certain rules, an emerging process arises and leads to self-repair and self-replication. For clarifying this connection between the city and the biological theory, I employ discourse analysis as my primary method. And I analyze Patrick Schumacher's discourse as it is the most well-known and widespread work on autopoiesis and architecture. For discourse analysis, actually discourse is about the production of knowledge through language. And language is not just influenced by, but influence or social environment. So therefore, I use discourse analysis to challenge assumptions in design research that are treated as self-evidence and may not be as clear as they apparently seem to be. So by implementing the model, I'm building up a three-dimensional matrix where I draw a big picture to uncover the productivity and relevancy of autopoiesis in describing, understanding the city. So the analysis developed in this study investigates Schumacher's commitment to rigor as well as consistency when he appropriates a biological theory to portray every aspect of architecture. I anticipate also that Schumacher discourse may be at play poetically as well as a way to not commit to clear statements. However, at the same time, he states rigor by using a biological theory fallaciously to legitimate the connection between theory and practice. So this research thus provides design researchers with a foundation for a renewed adoption of the terminology that is used from science to architecture. And it particularly provides insights to reflect upon Maturana, Varela, and Uribe's effort to define the autonomy of living systems. Thanks a lot. Oops. Let me stop sharing my screen. Oops. Thanks to all.
Thank you, Guillermo. And that was a very complicated theme in a very short time. And I think
I tried my best.
you have already the pre-recorded presentations that go into far more detail online, and the panelists have been able to prepare looking at that. And I think you're not the only one with a very specialized subject. Special topics is today's topic, and so I would like to invite the panelists. We have had some of you assigned to Guillermo's presentation to go ahead with comments and asking questions. The important thing is here that we are asking constructive comments, right? And so this is about being productive together. Please go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if I can start.
Yes, please.
I would like to. Okay, I would like to point out that well, it's very interesting the topic that how do you relate this impact of this, let's say, devices in urbanism like the tricycles. It's not very clear how will you use these metaphors, these analogies to understand better, to better understand the impact of those devices. I think maybe you can work on that, on the, let's say, the implementation of the tool, of the methodology. And also I think that maybe this difference that you make between formal and informal, precise and vague, I think it's more dynamic. It's not that the disciplines has a formal and then the poetic part is more informal. I think it's more dynamic. You have inside the, let's say, precise part of the discipline a lot of metaphors also. And I think it's even it's different if you work with a metaphor versus if you work with an analogy. I think the analogy gives you like the functionality of the metaphor, and it's quite different. I think it's maybe more useful for the thing you are looking for. And I think that there is a large history of biological metaphors in urbanism. I think it would be great if you can explore that. Besides Schumacher, for example, I don't know, Patrick Guedes. There is a huge history of biological metaphors in urbanism. I think you can use that also. And I think you said at the end of your presentation that that these metaphors, or let's say poetical language, is used to legitimate. And I think that maybe it's not only to legitimate, but also to discover. It's a tool to, let's say, see new things.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's all from my
Exactly.
side, but congratulations. I think it's a very interesting research.
Thanks a lot for your comments. Yeah, you are right. Actually, yeah, the link between if I may, I don't know if I have the chance to reply.
Oh,
I guess.
sure you can. This is a
I mean,
discussion.
okay. I thank you for your comments. Actually, they are very true. The link between urbanism and the theory, actually, it comes from what I call a three-dimensional corridor that basically indicates that the theory of autopoiesis can be applied not only in just one scale, but also to a broader band, that it can be used to describe city, or it can be used to describe a neighborhood. But the thing that what I ask actually is how that works, how that is productive. And that the same happens with the terms, with the rhetoric devices that I'm using to test it against Patrick Schumacher's discourse. That actually I'm not specifying what I'm not trying to take one and say, okay, this is working. No, actually, I'm testing a list of literary devices against Patrick Schumacher's discourse in order to see which one can be at play, or obviously behind an abductive reasoning. That, well, actually behind a method that I'm using that is inference to the best explanation, that basically sets, okay, I choose this option because it's the best explanation of what I see, of the evidence that I see. So that makes
The Occam
yeah, exactly, that's it. And analyzing which one could be at play, what I would infer, I would further infer, is actually how that is productive, how this theory can be productive in describing the city. Which mode is it using? Is it used for expiring readers? It is used for it is utilitarian, that you can use it for something, for some reasons. So that's actually the key. But yeah,
Thanks.
okay. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I would like to encourage the next panelist from CAAD to also share his comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Henry Achter here, CTU in Prague, from CAAD also. Thanks a lot for your presentation. It is a topic that I find very interesting. Of course, Schumacher is a quite controversial person to read and analyze. Your methodological framework is very much language-based. So I think before you can do linguistic, language-based analysis, I think you should also need a framework that describes the various modes and roles, how language is used in architecture. And just out of the top of my head, 3 suggestions come to mind. There are probably more. The first one is language in design action. One of the reasons why architects don't like science and research is that it fixates the meaning of terms. A door is always a door, a window is always a window, a wall is always a wall. But when you are designing, you cannot be fixated on the words, and the words have to be more fluid because they have to open up inspiration, association,
exactly,
and things like that. So that is one framework, how to use language in a design setting. Then the second framework is in the field of architectural theory. For example, what Schumacher has been doing. In that area, words have to be very precise, because you have to describe your theory very, very clearly. Obviously, a lot depends on your philosophical background, what kind of in what kind of tradition you are trying to write your theoretical work. Yeah, hermeneutical, positivistic Western view, philosophical, transcendental, and each of these positions obviously influences how you would use the clarity of your language. And then a third type, which I would call architectural scientific research, where you try to be as objective and descriptive as possible. There are probably more uses. So I think when you start to analyze Schumacher's work, that you should be aware of these various roles that language can play, and probably you need to identify the moments, what kind of language and what kind of purpose or agenda Schumacher has at certain points in the text. Because otherwise you can make wrong assumptions what he is trying to say in the text, and therefore I think your conclusions then will probably go in the wrong direction. In some extent, you already showed it in your presentation, because one of the axes that you showed was the effect on the reader. And that is probably another dimension of language use, and that is to impress. Yeah, especially Schumacher has this effect that he says, "Look how clever and intelligent I am, and you are ignorant." Yeah. So he's trying to sell himself as the superior architect who knows everything, and you simply have to listen and follow his divine ideas. Yeah, so I would say before you start, you need to formulate such a kind of active framework in which you can pinpoint what kind of language uses are being used.
Guillermo, do you want to briefly say something?
Well, yes. Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, you are very right. I was thinking to put some kind. Well, there is going to be a chapter specifically on that for sure, because it needs to clarify. It needs to be clarified. Actually, at the end of the thesis, that's the outcome. What is the effect on readers? What is it is inspiring, or it is not, or it is just a way of propaganding his work, or it is not, you know. Yeah, but thanks a lot. Yeah, you're very right.
Thanks a lot. We would like to also open the floor to questions from the bigger panel, and also for those of you who are listening on YouTube, please feel free to drop in comments. We will live feed them into the discussion. So we are also listening to you out there, even though you can't really speak up. So to the larger panel, do you have any kind of comments, something that comes to mind, anything you want to share with Guillermo? Also, of course, you other PhD students, you know, this is not limited to only listening to supervisors. It's really, really important to also be able to manage questions to your peers. You're going to be professors before you know it.
Maybe I can ask a question.
Yes,
it's
please.
Not going to be a very detailed question, but thank you very much, Guillermo, for the presentation. I have one overall question to begin with. Why did you choose Patrick Schumacher to base your thesis on? So this is the first question, compared to all the other existing theories in fluid architecture, posed by many others. And then, what do you think would be the outcome of your work? How your outcome is going to contribute to the field of architecture at large?
Thank you. Sorry. Yes, actually, very good questions. This has been around several times during my tutorials and everything. Why I choose Patrick Schumacher is because actually she's very well known, and it is a widespread theory of autopoiesis in architecture. And I am an architect, and I'm from the Department of Architecture and Design. And actually, what worries me is that, well, what concerns me is that Patrick Schumacher is using a very concise and precise theory that is autopoiesis, that is not abstract at all, even though it has been criticized for it, but it's not to describe architecture in a way that may not be justified and may not be clear for readers, and especially readers that are somehow using his theory to produce not just research but design. So that's why I choose Patrick Schumacher's work discourse. And the other one, how this thesis will contribute. Well, actually, I think that it will contribute not just to the department, to the research design students or researchers, but also to I would be glad if that research goes on to a broader audience, such as science, because we are not the only domain that actually is appropriating terms from science. Science is also appropriating terms from architecture to define processes and biological process and physical process, chemical processes. So it may contribute to those both fields, to fields, domains, to expand upon autopoiesis theory. But also to think about how these terms has been used and has been appropriated and almost usurped from other domains. I don't know if that.
Thanks a lot for your answer. Can I ask again, is there anything from YouTube that is coming in live as we speak? That would be Corey. Are you aware of anything? Because it would be great to also offer this feedback link before we go to the next student. I understand that discussions on this forum can last for a long time because we have a unique opportunity, and the moderator's unfortunate task is to always cut people short and just herd them to the next event. So, all right, maybe Corey, if there's any questions, you can feed them back later. Everybody will stay in the call, so we'll be happy to answer questions a bit later as well.
I am looking for the questions, but there's not a response yet.
Okay, that's fine.
So I will let you know.
Okay, just keep looking every now and then. Otherwise, we waste time. Okay, Henry, please.
I think there was a remark in the beginning that the chat wasn't available for the YouTube followers. Is that correct?
I fixed it. Yeah, it's
okay,
now
great.
available. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, Cora is very busy in the background. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So I'm conscious of time, and thank you so much. I'm very sure that the panelists will also be happy to provide additional comments if you have any kind of further questions. Same with your colleagues from the other PhD students. So please feel free to approach them. They're all over the internet. They're easy to find. If you're not successful, we can provide the addresses as well. So we'll go on to our next presenter, Juan Pablo Ugarte from Harvard Graduate School of Design. Are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. I'll start sharing my screen. Thank you for the opportunity in the meantime. Okay, so are you seeing the PDF here?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, great. So I'll start.
Please go ahead.
Yes. Okay, my name is Juan Pablo Ugarte. I am a doctoral candidate at the Harvard GSD, and my thesis project is titled The Oculomotor Correlates of Design Cognition to Eye Tracking Studies in Exploratory Model Making. So what I'm doing is use eye tracking technology to study the oculomotor correlates of exploratory model making. The reason I'm doing it is to expand our understanding of the design cognition mechanisms that underlie this practice. And how I'm doing it is by taking an embodied view of design, which allows me to study perceptomotor processes such as eye movements as a form of cognition. So I situate my thesis at the intersection of design studies and computer-aided architectural design. And more explicitly, I think I'm addressing a gap in our understanding of how model making work at a cognitive level. And I'm inspired or motivated by recent work in architectural robotics. I think I'm contributing to sort of research that is being done there. So eye movements, right? We move our eyes all the time. And the reason we do this is because the region of high acuity vision in our retina called fovea is tiny. So in order to sample and gather relevant data from the visual field, we have to move our eyes, and we do it 3 to 4 times per second. Now, these eye movements are not random and they are not deterministic. Rather, our eyes are pulled by bottom-up salience in the visual field, and then also our eyes are pushed to certain locations by top-down cognitive factors. So eye tracking is a process of measuring these eye movements to produce a record of where a person looked, in what order, and for how long. And the eye tracking literature suggests that these movements highly correlate with motoric action when you are sort of doing something. They vary as a function of cognitive task, and they are also modulated by level of expertise. So in order to sort of, based on this, my research addresses the following questions. First, what are the gaze behaviors of designers during exploratory model making? Second, how these gaze behaviors correlate with motoric action and high-level design strategies? And third, how are these movements affected by design task and by level of expertise? So in order to study this, I will conduct 2 studies. The first study broadly examines the gaze behaviors of high-level design tasks in a real model making study. And the second one is screen-based, and it goes much deeper into some of the cognitive mechanisms that underlie model making. So this is sort of a basic comparison. I'm using very different eye tracking sort of approaches and paradigms to sort of, I think they work complementary. So the first study is based on studies in exploratory model making conducted by Daniel Smithwick in 2016, and it combines that with classic literature on dexterous manipulation of objects in natural tasks from the eye tracking literature. So what I'm doing is I'm asking people to work with these sort of oddly shaped blocks, which I didn't do myself, I should say. This is a children's toy. And I'm telling them to do different things. In one task, I just asked them to move these blocks around into different colored spaces. In the second task, I asked them to copy some structures. In the third task, I asked them to build some structure inspired by some design constraints. And in the fourth task, I asked them to build a high-rise building on a site. And I have several hypotheses. I think the most important ones here is that as the tasks grow in complexity and abstraction, I expect to see very specific eye movements that are not present in the most basic tasks. And for me, that is sort of a way in to say that our eye movements somehow reflect our design thinking. And sort of this has been challenging for me because there's not much literature sort of addressing design creativity at that level. So I have come with my own sort of categories, which are placeholders for now, but you see those on the right side of the table to describe how these tasks are different from one another. This is my experimental setup. This is how people look when they're doing this study. These are some images captured by the tracker, and you can see all of this in greater detail in my video. I think I'll stop here. I just want to say that sort of I have other experiments planned. They are not as defined yet. I'm waiting for my preliminary results to sort of inform that. But I can talk about them if you want to later on. Thank you.
Thank you. We are very sure you can talk about it for a long time. So let's see what the reviewers have to say. For your presentation, we've had panelists from CAAD and from Cadria assigned to you, who will have seen all the videos you provided in depth and will have already prepared some questions, I believe. Please go ahead with asking Juan Pablo about anything you like.
All right, thank you. First, I would like to thank you for the fantastic video presentation you sent to us, very concise, and I really enjoyed watching it. So you are investigating what I think a very important topic that in architecture that more research I think is kind of required in that direction to demystify the process of design. I actually have 2 questions for you. One of them is more kind of suggestion and less than a question. So the first question is for study 1 that you conducted, can you explain a little bit the process by which you selected the participants in your study? Do they possess any prior knowledge in design? If yes, were they students, graduates, professionals? I think the same would apply to the second study that you're about to conduct. And in addition, I would like also to ask about the sample size you selected. Did you mean by the number of participants? How did you actually decide how many participants is enough for your study? This is the first question, and I can ask you the other one later.
For sure, thank you. So yes, for study one, I really wanted to look at experts and not at novices, because sort of the correlation between gaze behavior and action depends to some extent to how accustomed you are to doing things. Also, I required them to understand high-level design concepts sort of out of the batch, right? I mean, they needed to know what they were doing. So I recruited GSD students. I ran the study with 6 people. That was a study, a pilot. And then the final study, I ran it with 13 people. Now I'm in Chile, actually, but the setup is still at the GSD because the GSD is closed. So when I return, based on the results after I analyze the data, I might sort of ask more people to participate. So yeah, there are experts. I requested specifically people with 4 years of architectural training and normal vision.
Okay, good.
Then, yeah, and then about the sample size, the other study actually want to compare novices versus experts, because in this more controlled setting, it's going to be easier to see differences emerge. The other eye tracker I'm going to use is table mounted. The detection is much more robust. The experiment is much more simple in terms of task, but much richer in design sort of design expertise required. So I think experts and novices are going to perform much differently. The sample size for that study, I would like to have between 30 and 50 students. I don't know if that's going to be realistic, but we'll see.
Okay, good. Juan, I think that you need to a little bit talk about maybe when you talk about your experiment, I think that will kind of explain the limitation or how we can possibly generalize the results from your study to kind of to make use of it, right? So the other question I have for you, it's a little bit more suggestion. I'm not sure about it, but I wonder if you considered asking your participants to talk as they design, like talk with themselves, so they may be able to give you another kind of source of output that you can correlate to immediate design decisions that you see from their eye movement. And hopefully you can help you kind of a little bit to create some kind of correlation between eye movement patterns and what they are thinking. I'm not sure if talking with themselves will be useful for you, but it's something might you be able to try, or you maybe comment about it.
Yes, absolutely. I did. So in the last task, I asked them to verbalize, the one that is sort of a real design activity, right? I told them to think about, first of all, I gave these primes, like think about the site context, think about sort of exterior spaces, terraces, and so forth. Think about sort of the programming. So do not make this a random aggregation of blocks, right? Make a building. And I told them, verbalize as you work. I asked questions when they weren't talking, and I will absolutely use what they are saying to sort of try to infer what they're thinking. At the same time, well, yes. So one thing that I'm doing through all the tasks is trying to find design strategies, try to sort of pick some basic behaviors and say, okay, this is one type of approach to building this, and these are other, right? So in the last one, I'm really going to rely on their language to sort of to code and to develop those specific strategies.
All right. Thank you. Again, I really enjoyed your work, and good luck.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks a lot for your comments. And we have also our panelist from Cadria, Skylo. Do you want to also offer your comments?
Yes. You can hear me, right?
Yes,
okay.
We can hear you.
Okay, good. Thank you for the presentation, and it's a lovely, very important research in my perspective, because I also do this kind of research in the VR and eye motion as well. So I actually have quite a bit of question, but I will just have to ask. I only have time to ask like a few. So one of the question is actually in the presentation, you actually talked about how your presentation actually relate to the robots. So, and after that, there's nothing related to the robots. I just wonder, what is the relationship with the robots when you are talking about this robotic design and your what is that called, that exploratory design. So what is the correlationship between these two? Why do you pick this thing? And in the end, is there something, the end product, which you are going to do with the robots or something? So, okay, this is my first question. Okay, maybe you can just answer this first.
Yeah, thank you. So this is sort of like almost a legacy aspect of my work that I'm reworking. I really entered through robotic fabrication. I really wanted to do something interactive real time, but then I realized we don't really know anything about how people think when they make things, right? So if we want sort of smart tools that do something, things that are meaningful, we really need to understand that. And there's a lot of push in robotic fabrication and personal fabrication and other fields to sort of have these machines help designers through the fabrication process, right? Rather than at the later parts just for fabricating. So I think, okay, that is leading to these tools assisting designers in real time and helping them design. So at the time I said, okay, well, robotic fabrication is pushing into this direction, and we could use this sort of substrate of knowledge to inform the development of tools that work in that way. But as of now, I'm doing nothing with a robot. And in the end, I think I might actually sort of disregard that and leave it a very secondary part in the background and motivation. But I'm right now sort of in the middle of shifting the accent of my research.
Okay, good. Because in the sense, because if you put the robots, it's going to give your direction a bit off course. Because right now, how the designer design, you have to relate it with the robots. Because you were saying, we want to do the robots, and how does it reflect with how designer design? But when we design, we don't actually use the robot to grab things. It's a very different method of design. So when you relate it to robot design, it's much more like pick, drop, or 3D printing, that kind of stuff. So the kind of relationship is very different to when you talk about design cognitive. So yeah, this is just my concern. And then another thing is that I have another question is, why do you choose this shape, the six-sided shape blocks, and this kind of blocks when it's simpler when you are just like having cubes? So why do you use this shape? And you have this specifically six shape. How does it actually help? Or in what sense does how do you come up with this design, and how does it help with the design cognitive?
Yeah, so that shape, I just want to emphasize, I didn't make it myself. I wish I had. This is a children's toy that I actually bought for my daughter, and I found myself playing with it all the time. And it's a super interesting system. It's very simple, but yet allows to make very complex shapes. It's very intuitive for designers, especially because we're sort of familiar with these hexagonal systems, and you can sort of rotate in increments of 60 degrees. So it allows for great formal complexity while being relatively simple. And then I guess when I was thinking about what sort of type of task to do, all I knew is I wanted to be able to build quickly from very simple things to things that could be very complex and open-ended. And I think this block sort of just performed right. So I didn't find myself in the need of really have to make more stuff. Then the other thing that I thought was, okay, these blocks could be purchased by anyone very easily. If anyone wanted to replicate my studies or build on them, it would be easier than if they had to actually build something new from scratch.
Okay, because this brings me to the next question, where in the video, because you didn't show in your PowerPoint, but in the video, at the last part, you actually show the color code, where the gradient of the eye tracking motions, to what extent at the form, how many, the level of color codes, at which position the people actually engage in terms of the eye tracking most, the dark color and the light color. So how does this actually engage or actually informs people how people design? This result is actually quite intriguing, the last picture. So, but I'm just wondering, you didn't really explain much on, this result.
Yeah, so in the task, I told people these blocks are different colors, and I told them they could use that as a design variable or not, just to make it easier to think about programs. So most people would resort to saying, okay, one color is commercial mixed use or something, and then the other one is residential. I thought it would facilitate the task. And then in terms of eye behavior, right? I mean, one theory says that our eyes move to parts that are salient in the visual field. That's sort of a bottom-up approach to eye movements. And then color would affect that. But then other literature says that when you're doing a task with your hands that requires manipulation and so on, all that sort of bottom-up layer is almost overridden by the necessity of manipulating things. So I haven't found any difference when people are grabbing one block versus the other in terms of oculomotor behavior, although I haven't done an in-depth analysis either, but I don't expect that to affect behavior. Now, I know in different type of setting and task, it would certainly affect. Color would be a big thing to control for, which is actually what I try to do in the first tasks where the blocks are white or just sort of plain wood. I try to remove that factor.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
I think this can go on for quite some time longer. So please take it up to the chat immediately afterwards, because I guess you can probably trade some comments after this immediate discussion. We've had a question to you, Juan Pablo, from the people who are watching right now on YouTube, from Elif Akhtas. How will you associate the gathered data based on eye movements with design thinking? So the idea is we need to relate back between the thinking part and the data. So what is the link you make?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Elif. So it's a two-part thing. One is I'm building this bottom up. So I don't know yet. What I expect is to see, on the one hand, that eye movement behavior, let's say the duration of your fixations and certain sort of low-level parameters change through the tasks. So that's going to be an input. I'm going to say, okay, since I'm seeing this variation, I'm trying to see how that correlates with whatever is happening in the design part, and I'll try to build a coding scheme out of that. On the other hand, I will also just sort of, based on my design expertise or whatever knowledge, right, that we all have here, I'll just observe these tasks many, many times, and I'll develop different coding schemes. So a coding scheme, simply saying, okay, in this part of the video, this person did this or that. So the first coding scheme I'm doing is, okay, what block are they manipulating? And what block are they looking at? Later on, it's going to be more complex. Like, are they grabbing two blocks and putting them together, or maybe grabbing one block and trying different positions, right? Based on that, I'm going to say, okay, maybe this strategy is called locate a location or find a position, while this other one is test combinations, right? So I'll develop those basic bottom-up coding schemes, and eventually I think I'll have a code that is rich enough to describe design thinking, or one could say, and I'll compare that with the gaze data and trying to find more specific correlations, hopefully. Maybe nothing will emerge, and that will be a finding too, I guess.
That's precisely the case. I think we don't have to promise. We are finding things out. So can I please ask around the bigger panel, panelists, the group of panelists, if there's other comments and suggestions, because we have another 2 minutes left for Juan Pablo. And I think, of course, there's always the chat later on, but if there's any live question, that would be even better.
I have a question. Oh, sorry. Sorry, go ahead.
Please, Henry.
Okay, sorry, Sheriff. Thank you. It was really, it looks really very well prepared research. I was just wondering, there are two things to distinguish. First of all, the observations that you will do, they will be very precise, they will be very explicit. You can measure them, you can read all the output, track the dots where the eyes are looking at. So that's a very explicit outcome. But the correlation then with how you want to explain the differences, that is more or less a black box. Yeah, that's a kind of a cognitive theory. And how would you ensure that your theory actually has some explanatory power for the differences that you will observe? That is my biggest concern.
Yes, thank you. That's something I think about every day. So in the first study, I'm mostly looking for correlation, but I'm trying to replicate findings that have been found by other people, but in other fields, right? So we know that people are gonna look, let's say, to whatever they're gonna grab, half a second before they grab it. We know that they are gonna accompany that sort of movement with their eyes, and when they manipulate, they're gonna do things. So there is actually a taxonomy of fixation types that I have already found when people do this, because it's sort of inherent to human tool use, I guess. And then I'm trying to find this new type, which I don't have a name yet, but would be sort of a more of an analytical fixation. And I'm just gonna say, when people do look at something and they don't do anything right after, they are sort of analyzing or thinking or whatever, right? And that is going to be just an entry point for me to say, okay, there's this correlation that is significant. If it is significant, hopefully it will be, but I'm not going to try to provide any explanatory sort of, I mean, I will speculate, but I won't be able to make that cross in the first study. However, in the second study, that is going to be more like a real experiment, and I will have much more control over the variable. So I will be able to have a control group and then have tasks and then see whether the behavior changes based on the experimental factor, let's say, or variable. And that would allow me to maybe have a little more of explanatory power or be able to say things with more certainty. But it's not my expectation to sort of be able to explain how we think. I just want to say eye movements correlate with our cognitive processes, and therefore we should sort of study them with more, we should study it more.
Great.
Thanks a lot. At this point, I'm very sure, again, there's more comments. Please take it to the chat room because we are at the end of our time. For Juan Pablo, thank you for your presentation and for the great discussion. And
thank you so much for all the questions.
There are more, I believe. So please use the chat to continue this while we're continuing with the next presentation. The next presenter is, sorry, I need to get the name. Larissa Negris da Souza from the University of Campinas with the topic Augmented Reality as a Tool to Aid Briefing Development. So yes. Larissa, you here?
Yes, I am. I'm going to share my screen.
Perfect. Okay. You got 3 minutes. Please try and stick to it. I know everybody can talk a lot about our favorite research topics.
Yes. I'm clicking on it. Just a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a second. Meanwhile, for everybody, can you please, just for clarity, to make the global nature of this event more evident, can you just add after your name which organization you're representing? Because even for the students, you have applied and you were selected by your respective organization. So that would be really nice to see from everybody.
Okay. So everybody can see it? Yeah?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's go. So my name is Larissa. I developed my PhD study at the University of Campinas, Brazil. And my research, Augmented Reality as a Tool to Aid Briefing Development, is being supervised by Professor Daniel Moreira and funded by FAPESP. An overview of my work is this triad, and which means I focus specifically on early phases of design, the program, considering AR technology as a way to aid program development. But to do so, visual communication of information has to be considered. My goal is to characterize the graphic representation of our architectural program and verify its inclusion in AR. This approach includes the third dimension in briefing design, which means adding another layer of information that changes the stimulus of work. I have 3 questions as guides. How the addition of a third dimension affects interpretation and meaning of briefing information. Briefing information into an AR platform assists and enables program development, and AR in the first stages of architectural design stimulates recognition and application of briefing information. Well, this is the idea of how the AR tool would look like. But of course, this is just an illustration for now. But from this, I can highlight in some important aspects of my study. Within the project and program aspects, I had to establish the type of data I would work with. Understanding that in architecture, different platforms require different graphic structures, which includes, of course, the AR spectrum. Therefore, I had to deepen my study in visual elements and their forms of combinations in general, but specifically, I analyzed briefing diagrams, how they were built, and which basic elements were used. To achieve all of that, I followed 5 steps. Initially, I had to create a theoretical base. the theoretical base. Then I explored the architectural program, its traditional tools, for example, and made considerations from that. I finished now the in-depth study of 2D diagrams, 2D visual languages, to be able to translate them into 3D diagrams and to arrive at the AR platform, which will bring me here to the later phases. That is the tool built to construction, where simulations will be made, and the end of the research will be in the analysis of functionality and conclusions. Overall, the expected result is the AR application and its use during briefing, but also I will have reformulated and systematized two-dimensional program diagrams and their 3D translations. Comprising such data in AR platforms highlights the importance of updating our approach to the architectural program, developing new kinds of abstractions in digital context, and contributes towards early architectural design phases assistance. That's it. This is my research. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Larissa. It's always complicated to put everything down to 3 minutes, but our assigned panelists have already done a little bit more background research. Now we have representatives from CAAD, Henry Achten, and from Cadria, Skylo, to give comments back to you. Who would like to go first?
Well, Henry can go first.
Okay. You have been volunteered, Henry.
Larissa, thank you very much for your presentation. It's very interesting research for sure. At the first thing, I think the focus is still very wide, very ambitious. So it will surely help if you will find a little bit more focus. For example, you use school design patterns. I guess they are a typical way of organizing knowledge, maybe in your school or in your region. And if you are going to compare better performance by architects using your new innovative system, then you need to find some kind of baseline against which you can measure better performance. Yeah. And the question, of course, is what is this better performance? Will they be more efficient when they analyze the brief? Will they generate more ideas? Will they generate more creative ideas? So you need, on the one hand, already have a fairly good documentation of the standard process, and then you develop your tool, and you are going to measure something, and you have to say in what respect your tool does something better. Of course, the key question is, what is this does something better? So if you can find some aspects like that will be really helpful for your research. I think in that respect, what you call briefing is still a very broad activity. So maybe if you could focus on one particular task that is very specific to the briefing. So for example, how an architect would rephrase their understanding of what they are trying to design. If that task becomes better or faster or more original, yeah, rather than just saying the very briefing in general, because it's still very broad. And finally, third remark, is AR the solution? Yeah, some tasks can be done or can improve dramatically also by innovatively combining, for example, two-dimensional representations on top of each other. Yeah, like using transparent layering, and in that sense get new insights. Yes, and so in a sense, saying I'm going to use augmented reality, you are answering in effect your question. Yeah, so I think you should be very aware of that. To what extent the assumption that you are going to use AR is already guiding the results that you will get. So you have to be careful about that. Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Henry. Do you want to reply to this, Teresa?
Yes, I can cover generally the questions, the comments. Thank you very much for the comments. I have to think about very much about these topics, and these are things that I've already thought about during my conversations with my supervisor, and this is my third year of research. But still, this is important to at this final part of my PhD to really end my research and answer my questions and answer my goal, all of that. But my comments is I selected the school design patterns because I wanted to restrict the sample, and these design patterns, they are already studied and settled. There are exactly 29 design patterns for schools, for school architecture, and this specific choice that I made is exactly to be able to answer this question about not being too broad in trying to solve all the problems or all the questions in during briefing. Because yes, and this, sorry, you can.
Sorry, I'm interrupting you. That immediately gave me, you say that they are very established design patterns. So that means you will be working with architects who know these design patterns. So in a sense, also these architects are specialists. Yeah, they know the field. So that means that there is a risk that you are offering them material that they have already digested because they are specialists. So maybe what would be a good idea is to do comparative research and have a group of architects who are not specialists in school design, yeah, and see if then this augmented reality helps these non-specialists to perform on the same level as the specialists. Sorry, that was it.
Yeah, I see. Actually, these design patterns, they are known in the academic field. But architects, the practitioners from this field, they do not use these specific patterns the way that they are. So this is the challenge, and this is why I have this one question. There is if the AR in first stages can stimulate this visualization of the patterns from these architects that they are not really used to it. So if I give them a text explaining the patterns, if I give them 2D diagrams explaining the patterns, and if I give them this AR tool so they can use and they can move objects freely, does this stimulate their recognition and the use and the application of the patterns? And this is the interesting point. I'm trying to bring something from the academic field that we are always discussing when talking about school architecture and bring into practice.
Thanks a lot. At this point, I have to intervene because the conversation is just heating up enough to bring in Sky from Cadria to heat it up a bit more. So, Sky, do you have any comments or feedback that you want to share?
Oh, yeah, yes, definitely. I do have a few questions because right now, in the first place, you didn't really explain how is this AR being presented? Is it using the HoloLens, or is it handphone, or how is this being shown? Because the kind of images you've shown is just 2D images, and then seeing this view and popping up the information, 2D information. So this whole process, how is this information being shown to the architects? Actually, there is one question which I actually think, like when I'm designing through using keyboards and mouse and keyboards and everything, how is this AR going to inform me this information? How is it being presented to me? And how is it going to affect my design process? This is one question which I think you didn't really present it, shown it in the videos, and also in your yeah. So yeah, I think you can try to answer this question first.
Okay, thank you. In my text and in my explanations that I go further and that I spend in depth of my research, I do put this problem of which tool I'm going to use, because even if I choose to work with smart glasses or with smartphones and tablets, this changes the way that I relate to the information, to the user interface. So yes, this is a point. And initially I am really focusing on using smart glasses and trying to have the hands free. So the architects that are going to use the tool, they are not restricted to holding a cell phone, holding some other equipment. But well, I do have, and so this is a more practical issue in my research, I do have problems with buying this specific equipment. So, and it would be easier in a point of affordance to use tablets and smartphones. And this also would be more easily affordable for the architects as well. If I had to work in a pandemic situation, still, I don't know exactly where we are going to be in a few months, I will have to perform my experiments in virtually. So if they have the equipment that would require just a cell phone, it would be easier for them. So these are kind of some of the decisions that I'm actually trying to rearrange due to our conditions nowadays.
I think my second question is really, I mean, if there's no tools and everything, it's easy to use tablets and mobile phones. But I think my next question is really because you are right now in your third year of your research in your PhD, so which is actually nearing the end. I think my next question is how are you going to evaluate your result? You know, how are you going to prove, you know, that this AR is going to be useful towards the architects, the whole design process? You know, what is the condition, you know, you're going to evaluate the people, you know, through all the, you know, equipment and everything. So, yeah.
Yes, so I will evaluate their use, and there are some methods that evaluate how, let's put it, how easy, but how, yes, I will use the word easy here. So how easy it is for them to understand the interface. So if they work in a certain way, and if they work with AR, how easy it is for them to find the places and to work with the environment that I have created. So this is a way of analyzing the outcomes. Because of that, I explained that I am analyzing user feedback on the tool, but also I'm going to analyze, I've described that I'm going to analyze how the combinations are made, if they used the patterns, if they use all the basic elements, how they combined the elements, and I will have to develop some programming to analyze this kind of connections and relations between the elements.
But I have to say right now, what you have said, the evaluation, I'm sorry, just last part, because what you have evaluated is just how people use the tools, but it's not helping in the design process, because that's one of your research questions. So this evaluation, you have to really think about, or maybe even talk to people how, to what extent, maybe it's quite close to the previous candidate where, you know, it's about some kind of design thinking, design connection, but I'm not sure if you want to move into that, but you are talking about design process, you know, how it actually improve the design, the information being fed it to the architect. So the kind of evaluation, you need to have that level of evaluation as well, not just the tools. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So with that, sorry, I have to interrupt a little bit because, like I said, the conversation could go on. We would be interested for any other further comments from the panel at large and from our audience on YouTube who's watching live. We can feed that question back to Larissa. So at the moment, there's no question, but please don't hesitate to ask because she can also answer to it and we can feed back this question to you. Anyone from our extended panel who would like to come up with any kind of comments, recommendations, literature? No, not really. We have another minute to go. Henry, please.
Just in general, with this type of research, where of course a lot of focus will be devoted to developing a tool and to make it work, there is a tendency that when you get to the stage that you have the tool and you can do the experiments, that you are so happy that everything works, that you forget about the validation of the work. Yeah, so just a general word of caution, because the prototyping part can be so demanding that at the end of the day, you basically have no energy left to do proper verification of the results. So please don't forget about that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
That's a very good hint, and this is the typical design question. A PhD keeps shifting in shape throughout its 3 to 7 years. So, it's quite important to tie back the back end to the questions that you started with, and to tune those two aspects to each other. And of course, the validation of the tool once you get there, unless the tool is the main outcome, but it rarely is. All right, so I think at this point we can take further questions, comments back to the chat if there's some more. For now, we will go to the next presenter, and I'm going to hand over to Sharif, who's going to take on the last two students who are going to present. After that, we'll have a general discussion. So please, Sharif, if you want to take on the moderation at this point.
Thank you, Candy. We're moving now to, I know that Bartosz has a very special setup from yesterday. He has this setup in his space, so I'm looking forward to listen to this interesting presentation mode. And I think he did that also in the video as well. So we welcome Bartosz Slowicki from Białystok University of Technology in Poland. Please, Bartosz, get started for your 3-minute marathon.
Yes, thank you. I will share my screen and I will begin.
Sure.
1 second. And okay. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. My name is Bartosz Slowicki, and I'm a PhD student at Białystok University of Technology in Poland. My thesis regards to the problem of perception of architecture in virtual space. I will be using my poster as a background for this 3-minute presentation, as the entire topic is quite huge, actually. I will be focusing on challenging myself to see how people react to different spaces in virtual reality, and how they perceive space, form, and the time and space in virtual reality, in order to create a kind of a summary of what we can do as designers and as future architects in order to create a user-friendly space only limited to the VR realm. And this is different from most of the other presentations, is that I'll be focusing on architecture that possibly may never become real in terms of the tangible world. So nothing that will be engineered, and nothing that will be calculated in terms of physics of the real world constraints and limitations. My research kind of goes forward into thinking about the future of society and the future of humanity in terms of transhumanism and the human 2.0. And this is research based on similarities of assumptions. For instance, Professor Doug Bowman also goes into the field of VR quite a lot, actually, from Virginia Tech. And what my research wants to what I would like to incorporate into the research is that architecture aspect, is how the human of the maybe 2050s will live in VR, and what we can do now in order to get ready for that time, in order to think about the way that we should be thinking about VR. So think about thinking. And as an outcome, I would like to create a sort of guideline for the future for the future designers in terms of the creation of space. So what is the difference between creating a simple one-story house in the real world, and the difference in creating that same house or a same aspect of a house in VR? Through my experience in VR, I've noticed a lot of quite strange elements that have to do with the use. So I've noticed that spaces that were designed to look like a house or to look like a general space become much smaller. I have a feeling that the space could use moderation and tweaking in order for that virtual human, for the virtual eyes to become more realistic with a higher immersion, and for that human to stay in a virtual space for a longer period of time. And I think my time is up, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bartos. We have lined up as focused feedback for Bartos, Rodrigo from Segradi and Masoud from Acadia. So Rodrigo, if you want to go ahead, please.
Yeah, please. Thank you, Sharif. So Bartosz, it's a very relevant and an interesting topic of research. I see maybe some problems, but I don't know. You said that the outcome will be a guideline for future designers, and I'm guessing that you're dealing with a tool that is, let's say, VR as a tool to design. Let's say a broad tool, like made by a lot of devices that will change a lot in the near future. I think that it's a technology that is in a phase of development that will change a lot in the near future, really a lot. And I don't really see. Maybe you can explain how you will deal with that to imagine a guideline for future designers, because it's problematic for me. I don't know.
Okay, and this is a good point, because as like you mentioned, the technology is changing quite rapidly. I understand that my research may be limited to the technology that I'm using right now and that I will use in the near future, but more of a guess. I'm hypothesizing that this has to do with the general fact of using exterior eyes, or like technological eyes for the virtual realm, and hoping that it will stay relevant for the next technology and the next gen VR applications that will come out. The guidelines are more of a I'm at a loss of words. It try to find relations between how the virtual world presents itself to the virtual human, and as technology changes, perhaps the field of view will change, the quality of the image will definitely change. It will become much more clear and much more immersive, but the aspect of creating space for virtual reality will stay the same for a much longer period than the actual technology used to show off the VR world. So I don't know if that answered.
So yeah. So the second question is that I can see that you are kind of focusing in the visual part of let's say a virtual reality. In reality, it's a lot more than just visual, and I think that will be one of the things that will change in the near future and develop in the near future. And you talked about friendly space, and when I think about a friendly space, I think a lot about other aspects of the space, not only the visual aspect of space. And I'm thinking about how you can let's say speculate about the relationship between the development of the technology and the design of the space, at the same time that you can split from the actual, let's say, physical design of spaces. Because if you just make a parallel between the physical design of spaces to a friendly virtual space, I think can be maybe not I don't know, too speculative to aim to that future.
In terms of friendly spaces, maybe it's a wrong word that I use, but through observation, I've noticed that people tend to shift out of different worlds, especially on, like, say, VR chat, the platform that I'm using to integrate my experiments on, is that certain spaces are basically not really created to stay in there for longer periods of time. Of course, there are aspects, and very important aspects, such as social aspects, such as the physical limitations of the body, that and like the smell and the sounds and all of those. But I'm only able to test a limited, constrained amount of elements in terms of the input, as not to just go overboard and try to find every single aspect. But I've noticed that some spaces are just, for some reason, and this is what I'm trying to figure out and try to describe, is that some of the spaces are, it's just hard to stay in there for longer periods of time. And this is also visible through population, as I have an insight into the amount of people that stay in that space, and I am able to record why people stay there, how many there are at a certain time, and try to figure out, you know, the traits of certain spaces that keep people there, except for, of course, like games and trendy things. There's something like I call the disruptive worlds. But basically, what is the relation between architectural space in VR into the factor that allows people and keeps people there for longer periods of time?
Okay, thank you. I'll have to cut you there, sorry. Thank you, Rodrigo, for your questions. Masoud, please go ahead.
Thank you, Artus. It was a very interesting and inspiring presentation. I looked at your video also. It's a very interesting idea, but I have some concerns. So first of all, you're trying to completely disintegrate all the physical constraints, program constraints, not the program, but many physical constraints that the architectures and basically the designers are dealing with in a regular architecture in your virtual world, right? So in that regard, you are going to create a completely free world. I'm not even sure that you need any guideline or rule if you want to design such a space. And then obviously there are going to be a lot of discussions. There's a degree that, okay, what is the functionality of this? Whether do we need this? Is this going to become a part of the reality, or this is going to become a space for entertainment rather than architecture, right? So this is my main concerns. If you want to relate it back to the field of architecture, you need at least some hard guidelines or anchor points in order to be able to perform design. Because if you free yourself and your methodology from any possible constraint in the field of architecture and design, then what would be left to design, right? So then anything and everything would be possible, even physical. You mentioned the physical relationship between the objects, etc., etc. That's the least to mention, right? So this is the first concern. The other concern that I have is that about the perception, or let's just say the futuristic view that we or as a whole might have for humankind, right? So for a long time, I can still see that we are going to live in an augmented reality world before we turn into complete virtual reality world. Whether this is going to completely happen or not, again, depends on the many factors, and we cannot really jump into that conclusion, right? So you are skipping one big step, which is living in an augmented reality world, and then going to the complete virtual reality world. And for me, I would say it would be more interesting to actually start thinking about that missing gap first, before completely disintegrate yourself from the real world and go to the virtual, right? And for the same reason, it makes it really difficult for anyone to look at your for instance, proposal and really criticize it, because there's so many things that can be criticized in your work, and you might actually have very legitimate answer for that, but because there is no tangible result or evidence to be compared with in the actual word and the word that you're creating, again, coming to conclusion would be almost impossible. So for that reason, I would say you may need to maybe reduce your scope of the work a little bit and develop, as you said, not guidelines for design, but guidelines for yourself, said, okay, these are at least the constraints that I would like to preserve in my work. And based on those constraints, I'm going to deliver a design. So based on those constraints, we would be able to judge your work, right? Or anyone else. So you can actually make your point clear about what you're trying to achieve.
Okay, thank you. In terms of the first question of the anchor points, and I like that term, and I think this is important, as this also has been brought up to me by some colleagues from my university. The thing with the virtual worlds is that most of them are actually designed to show off real world scenarios. So I guess you can call it that virtual houses will still look like a house. It is just a matter of the human, which has its own height and has the settings, I guess you can say, of the virtual body, is just to check how big or how narrow or what traits should that virtual house have in comparison to the real one, for that virtual human to function better and function for a longer period of time. So in terms of anchor points, yeah, I agree that limitless architecture is literally limitless, so that we can create huge spaces with warps that allow us to travel huge distances in a matter of seconds. And this is something that it is tempting. I would love to try to work on it, but I understand that this has to be limited to something that we can see for our own eyes in terms of the real world. So yeah, you are 100% right in terms of anchoring to the real world and to some simpler forms. In terms of the second question, I kind of understand it is a follow-up of the anchor points. Is I would love to have that research influence the way that next-gen games and next-gen virtual platforms are created. And I understand that the augmented living and the augmented part of living is something that we will also be in. I guess you can even call using a smartphone a kind of augmented living, since we are able to basically take part in the virtual world just through our phones. But I think that I might disagree a little bit in terms of the fact that we will be proceeding in a linear fashion from real world living to augmented to virtual reality, as it's just basically an observation of mine that there are purists that stick to virtual reality. They might use augmented reality, but the thought of completely immersing themselves in a totally different world is a temptation too good to pass by. And I think this might split up in a Y fashion. So augmented and virtual reality might be developed at the same time. So that's my answer.
Just a small hint then for your basically anchoring points. In your virtual world, what would be the limitation of let's call it the human body motion limitation? So maybe you can actually use that as a guideline how to design your space. Because if you want to live or stay stationary for a long period of time, or if you want to basically explore spaces, what would be the limitations you would face? Because you still need a physical space.
Yeah. This also influences the way that people use VR, because there are full body tracking, something kind of like in the back of me, which it takes too long to turn on to show. But basically, there are different play styles. So some people might just sit down and play with a joypad. Others might use the VR hands. Others might use their whole body. So at this point, I think the limitation has to be. I think I need more time to figure out what that limitation would be. I might not be able to answer right now. I don't want to give a wrong answer.
No, these are all suggestions, not answers.
But yeah, it is. Yep. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Bartos. Sorry, I'll have to intervene. Maybe we have time for just one quick question from the audience or the larger audience.
I actually have a quick question, maybe a suggestion.
Sure. Go ahead.
Is there anything to learn from Minecraft? I know kids these days not only use blocks and Legos to build kind of and play with, to build the houses, um, and kind of experiment with this virtual worlds. I wonder if you come across some kind of studies and if there's anything to learn from that. Maybe this will help you kind of to define the constraints that Masood is talking about, building on that literature.
Yeah, I think Minecraft is a really it's a broad platform for experiments of all sorts. In terms of virtual reality, I know there are scenarios where we can play Minecraft using VR, but I view Minecraft as more of a sandbox mode for creationism and just for general design than for VR living. I know there are people that spend a lot of time in Minecraft, and it is a good tool for rapid prototyping of really limitless space. But the difference in between the VR Minecraft and the VR worlds is that Minecraft is kind of limited to its own architectural integrity and the style, and that it has certain constraints that might maybe in a positive way, maybe I'm viewing it a little bit wrong, but may not allow for a certain style of development for that space to be implemented. To research the way that people create objects in Minecraft is, I think it's a good way to get prepared for VR. But I don't think I would base my research on a greater scale on Minecraft, but it is something that I should take into account.
Okay, thank you very much, Bartos. I think you're already receiving lots of questions on the chat, so maybe we can continue that discussion on the chat. And I think it's always useful to have one of the benefits of this workshop is to kind of work with the idea of where the scope is and where the kind of how to narrow down our scope more into PhD research in general. So thank you so much, and we'll move to the last student today, Wilson Barbosa Nito from University of Campinas. Please, Wilson, are you ready?
Hello. Can you guys hear me properly? Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
I'll share my screen here.
Before you start, Wilson, I would like to remind that there will be a voting at the end of the workshop for the attendees from YouTube and from this panel as well. Just a quick reminder, and you can go on. Thank you.
Thank you, Koran. Okay, Wilson, go ahead, please.
Okay. Hi, I'm Wilson Barbosa from Brazil. The title of my research is High Performance Hybrid Spaces, Mass Customization from Furniture Design to Environmental Comfort. I'm a PhD candidate under the guidance of Professor Gabriela Celani. So the present research aims to understand the transformation in the current workplace and learning environments and propose new types of furniture for these new hybrid spaces. So the goal is to incorporate new materials, manufacturing technologies, design solutions to suit different habits, new ways of interaction between people, postures, ergonomic demands, and personalized needs. So if we look back into this medieval, let's say, classroom, we can see that what we face today in our learning environment hasn't changed much, where we have a teacher in front of the room, students sitting one beside the other, and even sleeping and chatting. So over time, there was always a relation between the workplace and learning environments. For example, in the Industrial Revolution, the schools was what and how schools teach was dictated by the industry. Nowadays, we have a different scenario where working and learning activities blend together in a sort of hybrid space. So how can furniture design for hybrid spaces incorporate new features for custom manufacturing in the industry? This is the main topic of my research. So I intend to develop a piece of furniture in collaboration with a furniture factory where automated production technologies and advanced manufacturing procedures are in full operation. The methodology is that I'm focusing is design science research. Regarding new material implementation, I'm looking to a type of material called phase change material, which is a material that can store heat energy from the environment and help control interior temperature in a passive way. There's a experiment that I'm planning where we're gonna use PCM in 2 meeting rooms so we can compare the temperature inside and outside and to see the performance and benefits of using PCM over furniture surfaces. So some expected results of my research is to propose innovative furniture solutions that respond to contemporary demands for these hybrid spaces, also to contribute to advancements of contemporary working and learning methodologies, and also to make academic research closer to the industry in order to validate concepts, as well as shorten the distance between theory and practice. So that's it.
Thank you, Wilson, very much. We have Mustafa Alani from CAAD and Masoud Akrazada again from PhD to give you focused comments. Mustafa, please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Sharif. Wilson, the elements of the research design wasn't so clear to me in your presentations. I mean, what kind of is the unit analysis here? What are you trying to achieve? How are you going to measure that? I know you talked about designing a piece of furniture. So after designing this piece of furniture, do you plan to do any kind of usability test to it? I mean, the research in general, I would really appreciate if you can a little bit kind of talk more about your research method and what you're trying to achieve.
Okay. So thank you for the question, Mustafa. So my goal is to get close to the industry and to understand how manufacturing processes can impact into the furniture design. And in that sense, I also want to bring to the industry new possibilities of material implementation into the design of a piece of furniture. And I wanted to validate this doing this experiment implementing phase change material into the surface of the furniture and compare this the use of this material and how what is the benefits of this implementation in this scenario of the furniture, of the surface of the furniture.
Okay, it's still, Wilson, not clear to me how you're going to actually measure that, measure your impact. So when you talk about this kind of concept, we need kind of, do you plan to do some kind of usability tests, surveys? How are you going to actually test the impact of the piece of furniture that you designed on the industry?
On the industry stage, actually before on our lab here, there's one experiment that I presented that we are planning, but this is the only step that we are planning to compare the use of a furniture with PCM and without PCM. So this might be the only, so far, the only stage that we are planning to compare the use of PCM in our research stage. Regarding the industry side, dimension, there is nothing planned so far because there are some agreements that we're still doing with the industry, and there might be some specific needs that we have to match to follow the requirements of the industry. But was that clear, Professor?
Yeah, Wilson, I would say you might need to a little bit clarify exactly the goal of your research, what you are trying to achieve, and how you're going to actually achieve that. What kind of methods you're going to use to measure. And I think you were talking about a lot of things in your documents and in your video. I think maybe you need to a little bit narrow down and be more specific with the things, because everything you mentioned here, I'm assuming you're gonna have some kind of way to measure or to investigate when you talk about. I think you talked about the authentic workspace, suitable spaces for educational point of view, new materials. And I think you have a lot in there. So maybe you need kind of to give it another look to maybe a little bit narrow down and be more specific. The other thing I also wanted to mention, how kind of you did establish this kind of relationship or analogy between the workspace and the learning environment, okay? I know you build on some of the literature, the existing literature, but how we know that the working space is not, we don't have a single workspace that we can do every type of work in it, right? We have offices for lawyers or whatever. We have architectural kind of studios. So we have different kind of categories for working spaces. So what kind of working spaces that you compare to the educational kind of platform? I think you need to also clarify that a little bit. And yeah, I think that's it. I'm going to leave the rest to, so if you want to respond to, yeah.
Okay. Do you want to very quickly respond, Wilson, and then we'll move to Masoud's questions?
Yes, I think this is one thing that I have to clarify. Yes, there are many possibilities when we talk about working and learning environments. And what I'm trying to come up is that today there is a mixture between working activities and learning activities. We learn as we work and vice versa. So this is what I'm trying to come up as the main statement of the new hybrid space, where this working environment can merge activities of learning and so on. So, okay, thank you very much. That okay. I'm going to consider that.
Thank you, Wilson. Masoud, please go ahead.
Yeah, so many questions were basically addressed by Mustafa. Thank you very much. This was very valid questions. Just to follow up on that, I'm trying again. I believe one thing that you can benefit from is to really go back and revisit your presentation and basically try to answer certain questions with respect to that. And what are those? So first of all, I believe your problem is more or less is dealing with a scale. So first of all, defining this question that whether you're going to basically design a furniture for your PhD in architecture, is this going to be enough? Is this basically the main idea of your PhD? What are you basically trying to address with that question? You mentioned in your presentation that you would like to relate the furniture to the space, to the architecture. Obviously, this was not very clear and was questioned by Mustafa. So you have to answer this question really well. So the question of a scale, that's really important. So you said you're interested in using phase change material, right? I did not see anything related to the type of phase change material you want to use. Usually phase change material has applications in a very, very small scales. So the question again, the same, what a scale you're going to operate in. And again, this is actually, again, more or less related to how you're going to answer questions posed earlier by Mustafa. So what are the metrics to basically measure success in your project? So you need to identify those. You need to identify the type of material you're going to work. You're going to identify the scale of the work. And then what would be the design criteria in your case, right? How do you propose various different design criteria? And at the end, if you look at your entire body of research, how are you going to contribute to the discourse of architecture? So this is really important. If you are at the School of Architecture and you're contributing to that, obviously working with material, basically designing a product, these are all important and they might actually be relevant to the field of architecture, but can you benefit this in a larger scale in the field of architecture, or you just want to, again, position yourself as an architect, but design products that are dealing with material. So this is really important for you yourself to just revisit that and try to answer these questions. In general, this comment is for all PhD students who presented so far. I would suggest you to just go through your entire presentation. And again, I'm going to bring up that very well-known questions that always people who are reviewing your work would ask themselves after reviewing, after reading, after watching your presentation that, okay, what is the main topic that they're going to work with? Why this main topic is really important? How they are going to address the challenges? What is the methodology? What would be the outcome? And how the outcome would actually impact the field. So these are the main questions that you need to basically be able to answer for a really, really good and well-described PhD proposal in order to be able to deliver something meaningful at the end.
Thank you, Masoud. I'm not sure Wilson will be able to answer these questions in 1 minute, but if you want to quickly just respond to the comments in general in 1 minute.
Yes, thank you, Masoud. I totally agree with some of the topics. Yes, there are some challenges that I have to face to clarify some ideas. There are some questions that I keep doing this every day. Okay, thank you very much for the contributions.
Thank you. Now we also open the floor to any questions from the audience here and the larger audience following us on YouTube. Are there any questions or comments? The floor here. Yes, Henry, go ahead.
Hey, Wilson, nice to see you. It's been a long time.
Yes, Henry.
I really like the ambition and the scope of your research. But as it was already mentioned a couple of times, it's really too broad to fit into one PhD project. So if I look at the boundary conditions that you are working in, you have a certain focus on phase changing material. You have a certain setting for industry for production techniques and things like that. So I put in the chat two examples of work that has been done before. One is the Nike chair by Greg Lynn and the body chair by Cas Oosterhuis. I feel that you really have a passion to come up with a furniture product at the end of your research. And then I think you should find a focus what that particular piece of furniture will actually do. You cannot do everything. Huh? For example, you can, one problem that you will have if we are spending more time behind the screen, working online and stuff like that, is that we don't move enough. Yeah, so can the chair help with our calorie consumption so we don't become obese while sitting 16 hours behind the computer? Or can it regulate our thermal distribution so we become more comfortable and can learn better? Yeah, so one particular aspect that you can actually implement in your chair prototype and measure. Yeah, so that at the end of the day, you have a product and you say, okay, this product will help workers and learners to do this particular task because it supports this and that biophysical process while they are doing that. And that's enough. If you have that, then that's fine. And forget about all the other world problems that you are trying to solve also.
Okay.
Can I add one more thing?
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would suggest, Wilson, you look at research through design as a way to set up your research, to build your research method, and also look at usability tests and what it might offer to you. Again, adding to what Henry was saying, to design that kind of chair. So research through design and maybe usability test will help you kind of to build your research method. Hope that helps.
Yeah. Time for one quick question.
Sharif, can I?
Rodrigo, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just to point out that maybe it could be interesting to see also the experience of the design computational lab of the Bartlett School of Design. They made a lot of chairs. I think like more than 1,000 chairs with a method of voxelization. Maybe it can be interesting for you. And also I want to recommend you an author, industrial designer called Ricardo Blanco. He worked a lot with the concept of chairness, or what is a chair, to how to define the chair, and I think maybe it can be important to speculate on that sense of what is a chair, and also maybe just briefly for all of you, and I think it's very important to narrate down as all my colleagues said, but also I think that it's important to have very clear research problems and research questions. I think that it's for us it's very important to understand better, and that definition of research problems and research questions. I think that you can have two basic options. You can go to some kind of gap spotting in the field, or you can go to a process of problematization, let's say, to challenge some assumptions of the field. And I think that has to be very clear. If you're going to a gap spotting or a problematization approach, that has to be very clear for us in your presentation, but in general, I mean. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rodrigo. There's also a question that just came in from YouTube. Is there a question regarding the void this new furniture will fill? This is from Education Lab.
I think it's also one of the comments that I heard today, that there are many aspects that I'm looking for, so I might have to narrow and focus on a very specific point, right?
Okay. Thank you very much, Wilson. That concludes our 5 presenters. Koray, will we conduct the voting now, or should we go with the general discussion first?
Yes, I think it would be nice to vote now, and after on we can continue the general discussion of the topic.
So this is open for the panelist students and also the followers on YouTube as well?
Yeah, exactly. I will now share the screen. Wait a second. And there you will find the link. And for whose know how to vote on Mentimeter, you can just follow up with me. This is the link. Now I'm posting it to the YouTube channel as well.
Okay.
And to our chat.
Okay, great.
Sorry, what is the code?
I just put it
He's
here.
posting it now. Yeah.
Sorry, now you can see it, but you can just click on the link and it directly takes you to the survey.
So you are just asked to rank from the 5 presentations that we have today, from 1st to 5th.
Exactly.
The voting. Okay, we'll do this maybe in 1-2 minutes and then continue with the general discussion.
Yes.
It's almost as exciting as the American elections.
Yes.
Yes.
We don't know who's gonna win. All right. I hope everybody had the time to fill the voting. I guess I would like to thank, first of all our 5 presenters today. Very, very exciting and intriguing topics, and all over the place in terms of diversity as well, and variety of topics. And that's why actually this session was more about the special topics in computational design research, which is really overarching a lot of and covering a lot of topics. I think also if you had taken a look at the chat, I think there is a lot of richness over there. I think Koray will also document this chat for us, because there's a lot of information over there.
Workshop, I will put a link for yesterday's logs, and for today I need to clean up a bit for the direct messages and such, but almost ready.
There is actually a lot of interesting questions and links and insights over there. I think this is very useful. I hope it's very useful for everybody.
Can I have a question?
Sure.
Will the chat log be available later on?
Yes, this I will give you a Google Drive link, which is led to a document where you can find everything in detail.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for interrupting.
Sure. At this point, we would like to open the floor for general discussion and questions about today's session. But I just wanted to point out first that I think one of the common threads that we saw throughout was maybe the idea of scope of the research. I think you heard a lot of the panelists talking about more definition, more narrowing down the scope, more clear kind of identification of the research problem, and so on. But I think also there is another common thread that relates to, we saw a lot of kind of technologies today, like VR, AR, PCM, and so on. And then implicitly throughout, we're seeing this, how this kind of connects to the world of, design thinking, the design process, and cognition and perception, and very interesting issues like that. So I think that was maybe one of the common lines whereby this session was kind of also revolving around, which really opens up a can of worms in terms of questions and how we address those issues, and how these kind of old architectural computing realm and technologies in general would feed into that, and how it becomes of value to the designer in general, and not the other way around. And it's not looking for just the coolest technology out there, but it's really looking at the value and the benefit, and how we can trigger a research question and look what kind of tools are sort of available to address that. So with that, I would just like to let's open the floor for the general discussion and questions. Does anybody have any questions generally?
I'd like to go ahead with another comment, which
Sure.
makes the can of worms that you opened even bigger, more worms, because it's not just about the technologies, it's not about only design and the human being, but for us, it's also about architecture. And there's a big question here, you know, what makes us as architects different from, let's say, the industrial designers or the product designers? Because what we are doing now is we are wearing VR goggles and we are designing chairs. So that's an interesting question. What is it that defines us? And I think Bartosz's question about, you know, living in and working with VR brings that question of our relationship to space into a very interesting new focus, even though the scope is huge and probably not easy to cover in one PhD. But the question about architecture, what is architecture today? What is architecture for us is really quite interesting, because I see more and more architects going into software development, into fabrication, and we're losing the kind of basic question, what makes this architecture? So that's a big can of worms, I know, but I keep thinking about this while listening to everybody's presentations.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sharif, I want to relate my comment to your previous comment in Christiane comment. I think there is sometimes a tendency to have a very instrumental approach to technology, and sometimes the question is, how can I use this technology? And I think it's a very on one side very general question, and on the other side is a question that is not asking something about architecture. It's asking, how can I use the technology? And I think that in somehow is we said in Spanish is how it's like putting the carriage in front of the horse,
right?
You know, and I think that I understand why they took this path, but I think it's important to point it out and to reflect about it.
Yes, totally agree. I think framing the question here, I think, was one of the main common kind of comments that we're getting about how we're really framing the research question to address the larger picture within the architectural realm. And it's not really about, as you're saying, Rodrigo, about how am I using the technology or how I'm addressing just the aspect of technological dimension. Any other questions?
I think it would be great to hear from the students, because
Yes,
it's easy
please.
to kind of keep musing among the panelists and have a
Yeah.
nice coffee table conversation. But students, you're here in the presence of a lot of experienced academics, and I think one of the questions we already discussed, that you think you will be talking about technical details. What you end up talking about is how you frame your research and how you generate the big explanations. That's normally one big surprise. But are there other questions from you?
Can I?
Sure.
Of course you can.
Thank you for the availability to speak out. Big thanks to Professor Henry regarding the last comment that he made, and this made me kind of question maybe my whole thesis. And I think this is something positive as a kind of mind opener to maybe not be afraid to do very extreme things in terms of research. And I think I will take out a lot of I will have to do a lot of thinking after these workshops in order to better understand what I'm actually doing. So maybe this is just a way to say thank you for the chance to receive this the feedback.
You're welcome, and of course, in general, applies that all the panel members from yesterday, today, tomorrow will always be available. If you have any questions, feel free to write us an email. and we will always be happy to give additional feedback.
Thank you, Henry.
Hi, can I have a question, please? Yes, hi.
Sure.
My name is Rasha. I presented yesterday, and I have a question for everybody, actually. I think most of us are doing research based on several experiments and based on sample sizes that vary in size and the number of users or experiments, let's say, and so on. So my question is, how do you get to decide what is the most efficient or effective sample size? And especially considering the current, let's say, constraints that we're facing given the COVID-19 issues. Thank you.
Okay, Henry, please go ahead.
Yeah, that depends really a lot on in which field you are working. I remember from my time when I was working at Eindhoven University of Technology, we had the urban planning group, and they would only be happy if they would send out thousands of inquiries to people and happy if they got a couple of hundred answers back, and then they said we have some reliable results. Then I had colleagues from the industrial design department, and they said, well, if we get only 5, that's also good. Yeah, so there is a very big range of numbers, and to be pragmatic, a lot depends on when is your supervisor happy with the numbers. I realize that that's not really a straight answer, but the reasoning is more or less how much certainty would you need to get from your sample size? Yeah, the basic fact is, if you don't have a lot of respondents for your research, you still have good answers, but your uncertainty level is high. If you find that acceptable, then you can work with low numbers, yeah, 10, 20, 30. If you need, if your research is more statistics oriented and you want to make more precise conclusions from the data, then you need larger numbers. Then we are talking about hundreds. And if you want to be super, super, super precise, which often in architecture is not the case, then you need thousands of samples. Yeah, so that's basically the area that you are looking at.
I might add to what Henry said. I'm not really expert in statistics, but I think there is some kind of statistical ways to determine your sample size. Also, it will highly depend on the problem you're investigating and the structure of your research. So for some problem, you might end up dealing only with using the available data. For instance, if you're dealing with something from the past, and that might be a limitation for your research. Okay, so you might need to address that, and it will affect the way you will be able to generalize the result later on. So you might need first to look at the statistical ways by which you can determine your sample size. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there is an equation. It also, again, it's what makes your supervisor happy. So I agree with that, but look first over there and see if the sample size you might get, it's realistic. You can get within the time frame you have, within the budget you have for your project, and things of that nature. If you cannot do that, this will be the limitation of your research, and you just acknowledge that, and that will be, I think, will be understandable.
Yeah. Masoud, I think you had a comment.
Oh, not necessarily. It was around. Sorry, it was in line with the same conversation. Yes, you can basically define your sample size based on a formula. There exists a formula. If you search for it, you will find it. This formula basically is derived based on the effect of your sample. So as soon as you identify certain patterns, you have to basically measure the deviation from that pattern and decide whether you need additional sample or not. If you really want to do the scientific work, you need to follow that path. And I agree with all those comments by Henry and Mustafa. I don't have anything to add to that. But just remember, for people who are doing a statistical analysis and basically you're basically dealing with data, the more sample that you have, obviously, the better conclusion you can derive.
Right, and I think also what was mentioned throughout, also from our panelists as well, the issue of, okay, how can we not get so obsessed or immersed in our work that we are, we love and passionate about, but also have the ability to kind of evaluate that and conduct proper maybe user testing, proper validation or verification, or how can we transfer from it? How can we generalize, if possible, from it? I think we tend to, especially in architectural research sometimes, to discard that along the way because we're really obsessed in the, we're really working on the technology and the computing and coding and programming, and we forget to kind of tackle that or put it in our planning, at least in the research, in our research planning agenda, because it takes a lot of time actually, and it kind of can drastically impact the results and the findings as well. Rodrigo?
Yeah, and I want to point out that sometimes, mostly when we work with humans, it's even more important how you define the sample, because the definition of the sample, how you narrow down the population of the sample, it is very important. Even if you have let's say a testing group with another characteristic of your main sample of population, and I think that sometimes we get kind of obsessed with numbers, but sometimes it's important also the quality of the sample.
Okay. Any other questions from the floor? So yes.
Oh no.
Okay, again, that's fine. Okay, Candid.
Well, may I say something?
Sure, sure.
I also want to say that I really appreciate all of the comments. I think based on my own experience, yeah, as you all sort of identify, it's really easy to get immersed on your own work and sometimes either lose perspective of sort of the bigger field out there, or sort of, yeah, feel so sort of in love of what you have done that sometimes it's important to just trim and get rid of the things that are no longer relevant or necessary. And I do think that there's a lot of sort of that work that happens ex post. So in my personal case, I'm expecting after I see some of the results and I sort of do a more robust data analysis, I'll be able to tell whether some of my initial assumptions or ideas do even sort of, are they relevant anymore, right? So I think many of us maybe are on that stage where, because of the comments we have heard and also the things we're going to discover along the way in the coming months, we might find ourselves in the position to having to sort of get rid of some of the initial ideas, which are often sort of the ones that we like the most because are the ones that brought us where we are, or that were the entry point to our research. So I anticipate that being a challenge, but I'm also excited about sort of moving forward and making my research as compact and precise and neat as possible. So thank you for sort of helping in the process.
Excellent. Just one last comment for everyone. I think the more you try to sharpen your research question, the easier it would be at the end to basically answer that question. If you try to define your research question as well as possible, then you can basically address that question and find a better result in your research. So the research question is the key in developing a really successful research.
I would like to add to this, however, it's easier said than done, because very often you do your work and then there's several constraints happening to you and you end up doing something related but not completely similar. And it's perfectly fine to adjust your research question in response to what you're actually doing, because very, very likely your initial research question wanted to save the world. and it was not really a PhD question.
Yes.
So I've always said that to students in the beginning. A PhD is all about maximizing heroism, and at the end, it's all about minimizing embarrassment. So the idea is to do something small and compact that really you can confidently present, and it's not about saving the world, and it's perfectly fine to kind of, just like in a normal design process, to go back and to revise. Am I really doing this? Should I really be doing this? So that in the end you come up with a matching question and answer.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Candy. Henry?
If I may add to that, that was really good.
Analogy.
I think what I usually advise my PhD students, but also other PhD students, that at the end of the day, when you have your PhD defense and you have your thesis written, it all boils down to how well you have documented and followed your methodology. Yeah, many people as opponents or critics, they may not agree with you. They can say it's not my cup of tea, or it's an irrelevant problem. Why did you do that? But they should not be arguing with your methodology. Yeah, there should be no mistake or fault in the way how you did things. If you have that fine and you follow that, then you can defend even against, you could say, a hostile group of opponents. I'm speaking from experience. So the methodology part, as boring as it sometimes seems, is really crucial. It's the backbone of your dissertation work. So don't forget about that.
Yeah.
And I'm very confident with the presentations that I saw today that you all will be having great results. Good.
Thank you, Henry. Rodrigo?
Yeah, just another last little thing. I think that the point that Henry has here about the methodology is also important for the theoretical thesis, because sometimes the theoretical thesis tend to be more speculative and work with let's say the literature, but you need also a methodology to do that, and that's very important. And also I want to point out something that Candy says, that I think it's very important to recognize and to be able to have a feedback between your, let's say, partial results and your expected results and your problematization or your research questions or your research problem. These results have to inform your question, and I think all the construct of the thesis has to be a little dynamic in that sense. So I think it's very important to don't get too much in love with your construct.
Yes, thank you, Rodrigo. It's a journey, as you know. The PhD is a full journey that has its ups and downs, and also revisits every once in a while. Anybody has any final comments, because we need to wrap up? Okay. I guess not. Candy, do you have any final comments generally?
No.
Maybe a round of applause for the students.
Yes, yes.
Yes,
We can
please.
open our mics and actually. Very nice work.
Thanks,
Yeah,
thanks a lot for presenting. It's great work, and it takes quite a bit of courage to present and to present voluntarily. I'm not so sure whether you have been volunteered by your supervisors, but it's really, really useful. So whenever you have opportunities like these, go and present, because every time you present, every time you get comments, no matter what kind of comments, you will be coming out and you're more confident.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the more actually that you go through this process, the more you kind of, as we heard from some of you right now, you kind of have this, revisit, or you are rethinking things, and things actually are becoming more clear in your mind. Once you explain them on and on and on, continuously, you are actually refining your thoughts, and you're unconsciously, you are making things, at least you're explaining them to yourself at least better, so that they become more clear to the audience. So by time, things can get more defined. Do we have any comments from Natalia and Henry?
Just one remark, if I may, for all the PhD students. Whenever you can, please publish. Get your papers out. Go to conferences. Yeah, it's the best way to organize your ideas, to push yourself to a limit, to make your results presentable and in an overview. Yeah, I cannot stress that enough. It's so important. So good luck with all that.
Mm-hmm. Natalia, do you have comments? No? Okay.
No.
Okay, I think that pretty much wraps it up. Thank you very much, everybody, all our students, and special thanks to our panelists today, and special also thanks to Candy very much for moderation. And I guess that wraps it up for today. Looking forward to our final day tomorrow, the Material and Fabrication Studies and Computational Design session. And the closing, I think we have to reiterate our thanks and gratitude to Birgul and Koray for these heroic efforts throughout the past months. We know how it was in the organization and everything, and there's a lot to thank them for and for their whole team. And thank you, everybody, for such a rich session and for the audience out there on YouTube. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck, everyone.
See you all
Thank you.
tomorrow.
Thanks.
Tomorrow.
Bye.
And tomorrow we will announce the next workshop.
Yes. So stay tuned.
And the winner.
Stay tuned.
Okay.
Yeah, and the winner as well.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Bye-bye. Thanks, Koray.
Thank you.
Thank you.